All right, now senior reporter Aviwe Mtila is in the mother city with more on this matter. Aviwe, good morning yet again. So earlier you spoke to ATM, who indicated that they are waiting final communication from the Speaker on the secret ballot at 12. But what are other parties' views on the secret ballot and just the prevailing climate there in Parliament?
Well, the African Transformation Movement is hoping that it will be third time lucky in convincing the Speaker of Parliament to allow the voting to be on secret ballot. They failed twice, as the Speaker said that the voting will be open, but they're saying that written one more time, suggesting that MPs are being threatened. Not only ANC MPs, but other political parties as well are being threatened by senior ANC leaders, in fact, to reject the motion that will set the inquiry in motion. But of course, I am now joined by the Democratic Alliance just to gain where their heads are ahead of that vote and debate that's expected at 2 o'clock at the City Hall. Aviwe Mtila joins us. Thank you very much for joining us. But the ATM suggests that they still want this to be done in secret ballot, also threatening court action by 12 o'clock. I want to get your sense in this discussion.
Look, of course, as the DA, we were always of the view that it's absolutely important for members of Parliament to be able to cast their vote in an open and transparent way so that members of the public can hold them accountable. We think it sets a particularly bad precedent when we start doing our work in secrecy, when members of the public can't hold us accountable to how we are voting on matters that are particularly important for our constitutional democracy. We know now things like the fact that how many MPs and which MPs in the ANC voted in favor of keeping Jacob Zuma in office in the 5th Parliament, because we were able to get those records from Parliament. And then an increasing number of times where we start to have these votes in secret is a deep problem. However, now members of Parliament are being threatened, and I think that should not be something that the Speaker should scoff at, because of course if people are getting death threats not only in the ANC but also in the opposition benches, then I think the Speaker should give some due diligence to that consideration. But I must warn that members of Parliament are public representatives, and it is absolutely incumbent on them to be able to cast votes, make decisions on behalf of South Africans in a way that South Africans can hold them accountable. The work that we do here is not for politicians. The work that we do here is for the people out there. And how is it that they're going to be able to hold us accountable if we cannot showcase our record of decision to them? However, as I say, as members of Parliament are receiving threats, then I think it's incumbent now on the Speaker to take a look at the facts before her and make a decision on that. Either way, the Democratic Alliance will be there in our numbers. We will be voting in favor of this motion because we believe that this is an important parliamentary process that must be set and must be allowed to continue.
Let's look at the numbers. With 400 parliament member, we need a 50+1 majority. The ANC, we do know, holds around 230 members of Parliament. Are you having those backroom discussions to try and convince some of the MPs of the ANC? Because in order for the motion to be adopted, it needs some of the ANC members.
Look, I mean, we are not having discussions with members of the ANC because our view here is that the ANC has over-sensationalized this vote. We are not voting today to impeach a president. Today we are voting to complete a process that we as Parliament started. We are the ones who commissioned the report of the independent panel. The report of the independent panel is now before us. And it would be absolutely bizarre for Parliament to say, thank you for having commissioned a report for millions of rands of public money. But now that the recommendations are before us, we don't like the recommendations, so we stifle the process. It absolutely makes no sense. And so, yes, we haven't been discussing this matter with the ANC because they are clearly have given their members of Parliament an instruction that they ought to vote a particular way. And it's also just important in addition to note that our interest is not in the internal machinations of the political landscape of the ANC. We're imploring members of Parliament in the ANC to do what's right, to conduct themselves in a way that is consistent with the oath of office that they took. And ultimately what they'll be doing then is not voting against their president. They'll be, in fact, voting so that an inquiry can be established so that the truth can be revealed. An innocent president would welcome the chance to have an inquiry into this matter explored and actually unpacked. It is absolutely bizarre to me that the president would act in this fashion, seek to review the report. The ANC would close ranks, seek to stifle this process if the president has nothing to hide.
Is he not well within his rights, though? He says the report in itself is flawed and is reviewing it, we do know. Is he not in his rights constitutionally to have those court processes going ahead?
He absolutely is within his rights. As I'm saying, if I were the president and I was in a scenario where I was of the firm belief that I have done everything that I did in the Phala saga by the book, I've broken no laws, I'm not guilty of gross misconduct, I would welcome a parliamentary process that would establish those exact facts. But the conduct of the president is not the conduct of a man who is seemingly innocent. The conduct of his party is not the conduct of a party that, one, respects Parliament, respects the people of South Africa, that also has faith in his innocence. And so for me, all of these things look together, don't point to a president who is in fact very comfortable with having a probe into his role into this matter. It sounds to me that we have a eNCA 2.0 here, where the ANC is once again closing ranks around a president of theirs, and once again rendering this institution useless in terms of being able to conduct its work of oversight and accountability over the executive.
And should then the ANC MPs toe the line and do what the party told them, to vote to reject the motion for the inquiry to go ahead? Is this the end of it, or what happens next?
I would really implore that ANC MPs and in the various caucuses this morning that they reconsider that position. Because again, you know, when one reads at the Zondo Commission report, you hear exactly how, in effect, Parliament aided and abetted state capture because of the majority of the ANC and how they clamped down on accountability. Today, the ANC has an opportunity to vote for a motion that says, let's look into the culpability of the president and let's clear his name if he's indeed innocent. But let's also vote first as members of Parliament before we are members of political parties. And so I would hope that sense will prevail. Although, you know, history does not suggest that that is in fact what will happen. But I hope that sense will prevail and that its leadership somehow can take themselves away from their own political fighting within the organization and realize that South Africans are watching. They want to see their leaders putting their interests first, putting the Constitution first, versus this dirty political race which is unfolding and also spilling over to the work of Parliament.
And should they not do that? Is that the end of it, or are you pursuing other avenues?
Look, ultimately for us, we are of the view that we can't simply have a report that has these damning findings, and we can't simply have a scenario where the president is suspected to have broken the law and by extension his oath of office, and simply leave it at that. And so we will definitely be exploring further options here, because again, we don't even think that this is something that started and began with the president. We think that the president and a network of government players, of ministers, and that whole thing needs to be uncovered. Aviwe, there cannot be one set of laws for ordinary South Africans and one set of laws for those who are politically connected. Ultimately, we've got to make sure that South Africans understand we all are equal before the law. And so we will not simply be resting on this matter. It might spell the end for a Section 89 process, but it does not mean that there aren't other avenues available to us in the parliamentary setup.
All right, thank you very much. Aviwe from the Democratic Alliance suggesting that if they fail today to get the Section 89 inquiry underway, they'll explore other avenues. We do know, of course, opposition parties do not have the majority in Parliament at the moment, 400 members, and out of those 400, 230 belong to the African National Congress. So that would suggest that the decision would be at the hands of the ANC, which has already told its members of Parliament to vote with what the party says and the NEC says, and that is to reject this motion.